welcome everyone. So this is a topic which is very close to heart for discussion when it comes to facility management team who keep track of all the operational cost of any commercial industrial facility. And from facility managers, actually, it also rolls up to the finance department for any corporate or any manufacturing unit or anyone basically who not only track the cost, but also they would like to budget the cost in the coming time. And then having some questions that how exactly we can budget our energy cost in coming time, given the tariff regimes, changing tariff structures, etc. And then recently, actually, it is not just with the finance, but very top level managements are also interested to know what is happening on the ground, because a lot of corporates have taken their internal sustainability targets and goals, and they would like to understand that how exactly they can plan their roadmap and whether they can look up to discoms to fulfill their targets, or how exactly energy tariffs are unfolding, green energy options are unfolding for them. So that is kind of a background that why this topic. And then it is not just a topic of interest for large corporates, but even the residential consumers, townships, and societies. So they are also wondering about the energy cost. We were in Bangalore earlier this week, and you might have heard protest happening in Karnataka, where the consumers got the shock of tariff changes. And luckily in Maharashtra, we do not typically get any such shocks. We typically know that what may happen, what is going to happen. So this session, as name suggests, that interpreting tariff regime from different perspectives. So it is to understand the perspective from different consumer sectors, different stakeholders, understanding the process behind the tariff setting, rationale behind the methodology, how tariffs are impacting different types of consumers, what are the expectations from the consumers, how tariff may affect overall economic activities within the state. So many things are maybe interrelated with the topic. And we would also like to deliberate on the ways and ideas for more cohesive nature of this overall ecosystem. Now, just on a other note, I'm not sure how many of you have read the book, The Difficulty of Being Good, The Subtle Art of Dharma. Has anyone checked this book? In fact, my colleague Nikhil suggested this book, and this book is authored by Gurucharan Das. It revolves around the great Indian epic of Mahabharata, and you must be wondering why the mention of this book. But when you read the book, the chapters in the book gives perspective from different characters within Mahabharata on the same set of events. So each character emerges as a typical character while they are trying to be right and trying to be good on their own standards and given the situation. So here I would say that all of us are consumer characters, but as a professional, we play different roles, representing our own organization as an industry, commercial consumer, discoms, or even regulator. And like I'm playing a role of host and moderator in this session to facilitate the discussion. So when you read the book, you will find that the book takes notion on many emotions and talk about it. But by the end of each section, you will see that it provides us with new perception of looking at the same situation or emotion. So I hope to achieve something similar at the end of this session, because this is a very interesting topic. Everyone will bring their own perspective. No one is perfectly right or wrong, but everyone has their perspective, and we have to think that how together we can make it more fruitful. So on this note, we have an eminent panel with us today. We have Shri Abhijeet Deshpande. I'm sure many of you already know him. So Abhijeet sir has more than 3 decades of extensive experience in the development of Maharashtra's electricity framework. He has immense contribution in the Indian power sector and niche areas of power procurement, technical and commercial matters, operations and regulatory structure. He has served as Maharashtra's electricity sector in various capacities, as Executive Engineer, Chief Engineer, and Director Operations. He has also served as a Secretary to the Honorable Maharashtra Electricity Regulatory Commission, MERC, just in the recent past, 2018 to 23. So, Mr. Deshpande, we are really honored to have you on this panel today. We have Mr. Amey Naik, Finance Director, India at Princeton Digital Group. So PDG develops and operates data center infrastructure. And in this current role, Amey is responsible for overall finance function for PDG India. And he is also working on sustainability initiatives for PDG India. One more interesting background is prior to joining PDG, Amey was CFO of Tata Power Renewable Energy Limited, and he has very extensive experience across various leadership roles with Tata Power Company as well. So welcome, Amey. Then we have Mr. Subodh Sant, General Manager, Siemens Real Estate and Head for Greater Mumbai region. Mr. Sant has extensive experience in manufacturing, production management, technical functions, maintenance, technology and process development, and facility management and real estate. He has extensive experience in Maharashtra, and I'm sure he has a lot of things to share and contribute to this panel. Welcome, Mr. Sant. And we also have Ms. Anne Josey, fellow at Prayas Energy Group, who brings one more perspective from a think tank working extensively on policy and regulations. And your current efforts are focusing on actually financial viability of distribution companies, rate and subsidy design, power procurement planning, and development of electricity markets. So very much relevant to today's point. So welcome to the session. Yeah. So in all, we have a perfect panel giving 360-degree overview on the tariff regimes in Maharashtra. Before we start with the actual panel, let us have some quick facts checks and summary of Maharashtra as a state. So I would request my colleague Nikhil Chauganchkar, who can take us through those data points so that we can quickly glance through the numbers and then start our panel.
Thank you, Netra, for setting up the context and these opening remarks, quite relevant. And the series that we have arranged with IESA Academy with support of CES is we have dedicated the first chapter to Maharashtra regime. Maharashtra has been historically one of the most progressive and industrialized states, wherein C&I consumers, C&I investments were seen across the regions in the state, let it be Vidarbha, Marathwada, Paschim Maharashtra, or our own financial capital of the country, Mumbai. On power distribution front, Maharashtra has been progressively adopting the infusions, let it be introducing the competition in the power distribution sector in Mumbai, financial capital of our country, wherein people have choices to select their power suppliers, with a lot of positives which are around like improvement in reliability over the years, increased RE adoption, reduced load shedding in the state, so thereby increasing the confidence in the industry. So these are the quick facts that Maharashtra contributes around 15% to India's industrial outputs. Maharashtra has been the leader in exports, accounts for overall 20% of India's exports, share of 29% of share in India's overall FDI during 2000 to 2020. MIDC has been instrumental in playing their role. We have 289 industrial areas with 66,000 hectares of land. Electricity consumption accounts for approximately 12% of energy consumption in India. Our per capita consumption is more than the national average. And we have a huge administrative setup taking care of urban and rural revenue zones. So in urban, we have 26 municipal corps, 29 municipal councils, 7 Nagar Panchayats, 7 containment boards. Why it is relevant? Just to set a context that such a vast setup and the topic that we are talking about is directly or indirectly impacting all these setups. So as I was talking about, so we have 4 major discoms, we have parallel licenses operational with amendment in the Electricity Acts. we have SEZ-based discoms, which are quite unique in nature, and Maharashtra has progressively adopted MSEDCL, one of the largest state discoms we have in the country. At present, MYT regulations 2019 regime has been governing these tariffs, and we have also adopted the framework offering the green tariffs, wherein CNI consumers will be helped with sourcing most of their energy through green sources by adopting these green tariff frameworks. Open access, which is the close to heart topic for CNI segment, it is allowed in Maharashtra progressively since long time, and it has been commercially viable over the period of time. Net metering has been allowed. It has been promoted very aggressively by the state. Maharashtra was one of the first states to adopt franchisee model, and it has been quite successful. And while there are a lot of positive, often especially state discom draws criticism from consumers for regularly increasing tariff, policy fluctuations, and therefore not respecting investment sentiments of the large consumer by indirectly creating some uncertainty in the investment scenario, especially in RE segment. So these kind of criticism are still drawn. And as Netra rightly pointed towards some other states, wherein we haven't received or seen the tariff hikes over the larger period. However, Maharashtra, by progressively adopting tariffs, have been avoiding the shocks to the consumers. When we really look at the perspectives, every stakeholder has a right perspective. Everybody is right. And this attempt is to explore and understand these perspectives and come out of the positive value addition, and by thereby benefiting this entire ecosystems. So over to Netra again. We have few slides wherein we have captured so how exactly, since we have a lot of audience from the academic background, quickly I'll spend not more than 1 minute on this. So how exactly tariff is getting calculated? This is a very generic understanding just to set the context. Licensee is calculating its expenses towards fulfilling its obligation to distribute the power to all the consumers. This revenue requirement is submitted along with whatever losses they are making or projecting to the Honorable State Commission. These requests undergoes thorough scrutiny and reviews along with public consultation processes, and accordingly Honorable Commission may approve or disallow certain expenses and then declare the tariffs, which will be applicable for certain financial years as per the regimes that is being followed in the states. And then once these tariffs are approved, these tariffs are implemented. And this cycle continues over the period of time. So this is a very basic flow of events captured from academic perspective. And moving on to the recent changes in the tariff. So MSEDCL tariff have undergone changes, hike around 18% compared to March 23 tariffs. And again, the marginal increase is expected, while the increase in terms of percentage looks around 18 to 20%. And with these new introductions, FSC have been reduced to zero, so the relief is reflected in immediate bills. Similar thing have been noticed with AEML and Tata Power in Mumbai area. So some significant tariff hikes have been noticed. Of course, we have seen these impacts because of the COVID and other factors. But idea of this webinar is to exchange the perspectives, how exactly every stakeholder, let it be CNI consumer, we have Amey wherein is representing the booming sector of data centers, and all the states are competing with each other for attracting the investments in data center segments, talking about how exactly these changes affect them. We have Subodh Sant. We will talk about the industrial perspectives, how exactly it affects the competitiveness from industrial segment and having such a huge establishment, having presence in multiple states. So now we have competition within the states and electricity being one of the important parameters. I guess this webinar will definitely bring some positive, valuable additions after the end of the session, and we will be able to put this forward at the right forums. So over to you, Netra, again to commence this.
Thank you very much, Nikhil. So without taking more time now, let us invite Mr. Abhijeet Deshpande for his remarks and opening statements. And basically, we look forward to you, sir, to with your vast experience in as a DISCOM as well as a regulatory commission. What are your perspectives on this? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Netra. I welcome all the participants for this webinar, Interpreting Tariff Regime, Unfolding Stakeholders Perspective, Maharashtra chapter. Good morning to all participants from India and probably good evening to all participants from USA. And there are some participants, I assume, from Europe also. So welcome all of you. To start with, I would like to give a small briefing on what is Electricity Act, what are the contents, and how the tariff is set by every state. Now, Electricity Act is a complete code by itself. I mean, it has everything that is required to be done for electricity sector per se, while regulating the electricity sector. And the most important component of this Electricity Act is the ERCs, Electricity Regulatory Commission, which have been carved out to maintain an arm's distance from government, especially when it comes to tariff setting. When we say that we have to maintain arm's length from government, the power, since it's in the concurrent list of Government of India's constitution, the powers of state government are unbridled when it comes to their prerogative for subsidy, which they can give to any class of consumer or any consumer, and also the very important section 108, under which they can give directions to the commission in public interest. So barring these two exceptions, the commission's working in that sense is absolutely independent of any other control. Now, the most important function of the commission is of tariff determination. So while determining the tariff, of course, the commission is guided by the Electricity Act, specifically section 61 to section 64. Now, section 61 specifically gives powers to the commission to formulate the regulations, which includes the tariff regulation, which of course is the most important component in tariff fixation and tariff setting. Now, when we are talking about tariff regulations, the regulations are for generation, transmission, and distribution. Generally, practically what happens is we keep on discussing the distribution company's tariff, the licensee as a distribution company, we keep on discussing that without appreciating that about 80% of the cost is a pass-through for generation and transmission. So the regulations, though they cover generation, transmission, and distribution, 80% is generation and transmission, and more or less about 75% is generation alone. So we can say in that sense, 75% cost as per the scheme of the Act is a pass-through. Of course, that is subject to various conditions, especially the prudence checks, the regulations that have stipulated the rules and regulations for a generation company, etc. Here, I just want to highlight that generation and transmission are also equally important, or rather very important compared to a distribution company, because the component which is under direct control of distribution company is approximately 20% of the ARR, whereas 80% is in the control of generation and transmission. So these two are almost 80% of the total ARR cost. Now, when we come to section 62 of the Electricity Act, it specifically gives how the tariff can be differentiated. Like there is always a discussion why somebody is paying less and why somebody is required to pay more, why somebody is required to cross-subsidize others, etc., etc. There is a clear mandate in the Act that the tariff needs to be differentiated on A, B, C, D, E, F parameters. And that is exactly by which the ERCs are bound that they have to fix the tariff. Of course, one important component in tariff fixation is a fuel adjustment cost, which is a direct pass-through. And when as we go along, we'll see how the FAC was impacted and how it reaches up to 20 to 25% of the tariff that has been fixed by the commission. Then we come to section 63, wherein it is very clearly mentioned that it has to be there is a process of procuring power as well as going in for infrastructure through section 23 transparent bidding mechanism, When you go for a transparent bidding mechanism, the powers of the commission are largely curtailed because they have to go as per the bidding guidelines, and then in that particular case, the powers of the commission are curtailed. They have to adopt the tariff or they have to reject the tariff adopted by giving specific reasons for adoption or rejection, as the case may be. The most important section is section 64, where the Act has laid down the procedure for fixing up the tariff. Now that procedure is very, very clear. It has given a time of 120 days to all the ERCs, and it is expected that all the ERCs complete their tariff proceedings by issuing a final order within 120 days. Of course, there are exceptions. All the ERCs are unable to do that in 120 days because of various difficulties that they have in their local areas. But fortunately, Maharashtra has been issuing all their tariff orders within 120 days. That is on 31st of March of the respective MYT and MTR period. Now, when we go to the next part, the tariff petition necessary involves the following steps. The licensee has to file their own petition, giving all the details of their expenses and what is the requirement of annual revenue requirement, that is called as ARR. Now, after filing of petition, the same is scrutinized by the commission's officers. Then the data gaps are raised because all the complete petition has to be in lines of the regulations that have been stipulated. The data gaps have raised. After raising the data gaps, there is a technical validation session with the licensees. After the technical validation session, the revised data gaps are raised and a final petition is required to be filed by the licensees. The petition is then required to be admitted by the commission based on the tariff regulations. Thereafter, there is a pre-publication, may not be the full petition, but there is a pre-publication in print media, and the petitions are placed on the websites. Thereafter, comments and suggestions are called for from the public and the users. Thereafter, a public hearing is held, or the public hearing are held in Mumbai for the 3 licenses, that is BEST, Adani, and Tata, and it is held at 6 revenue headquarters for MSEDCL for the public who have the option to physically participate in that public hearing. Thereafter, their responses have to be taken into account before passing the order, and then the final order is issued by the commission. Now, MYT regulations are in a sense sacrosanct. But when we are saying that sacrosanct, they have checks and balances introduced in that, which is called as prudence check. And these prudence check are the prerogative of the commission, where they have to take the practical aspects into view before passing a particular order by giving reasons. Now, to name a few, there was a demand within the hotel industry who are an commercial category consumers, that obviously bread and breakfast, which is operated in Konkan region, where they rent out their residential homes for tourists on Saturdays and Sundays, that cannot be treated as a commercial activity. It is just a support system. So though the regulations have said certain things, when we took into account all these things, the commission thought it fit that yes, the bread and breakfast in a particular category can be treated as a residential consumption, and that they have been removed from the commercial category and they have been put into the residential category. Now, there are other balancing acts where licensee and consumers' interests need to be balanced, where we are allowed to deviate. The commission is allowed to deviate from the regulation. Of course, they have to be within the overall framework of the regulations and the act. But I'm just trying to highlight that regulations, though in a sense are sacrosanct, there is a window available for deviation by way of prudence check. So when a tariff order is specifically passed, we have to compare the costs that have been incurred on a similar activity in the previous year or previous years or a previous period. It could be mid-term review or a MYT period. Then we need to go into for the reasons for deviation. Then the audited accounts is a document that is heavily relied upon. Then there are various market conditions. To give a latest example is the coal cost. The coal cost on the HBA index, especially the imported coal cost, it has increased 300%. So obviously, these type of changes are not factored in the regulation, and they have to be taken care while deciding the actual practical situation when a MYT, that is multi-year tariff, or a MTR is filed by the respective licensees. So we had to factor in this increase in coal cost, which was absolutely out of control of anybody. It was the HBA index that got increased. Then we have various things on the merit order dispatch, merely stating that the cheapest power should get dispatched. So we need to check the prudence that whether the costlier power got dispatched over the cheapest power which was there, and whether that dispatch was based on the technical situation, based on the state load dispatch centers directives, because it cannot be the cost as the only consideration for dispatching power. We need to factor in the load flow studies. Where is the load? If there is a failure in a particular plant, there is a necessity of allowing a costlier power to be started and backing down of cheaper power. So all these things, there are various checks and balances specifically under the control of state dispatch load center. So all these factors have to be seen, and if they are justified, the cost of power, even if it is costlier than the other available power sources, are factored in, and that is passed through by the commission. So there are various extraordinary situations like we recently faced in COVID, where the complete forecast, the complete sales mix, the complete consumer mix, everything went for a toss. And suddenly the revenues dropped down, the revenues from the subsidizing category dropped down, and revenues from subsidized category went up, thereby necessitating a larger requirement of cross subsidy. So these are all the things which were not anticipated in the regulations, the MYT regulations per se, to that extent. Of course, there were openings, there were windows which were used to to address these type of issues. But then I'm again trying to highlight that the sacrosanct MYT regulations need to be a little more flexible when it comes to ground realities, and that is what is normally done by all the ERCs while fixing the tariff, and while balancing the interest of consumers to a big extent, and then licensees to some extent wherever it is mandated. So after the most important factor is, of course, fixing the quantity, rupees crores required for a particular licensee to run their show, and that is called as ARR. Once the ARR is fixed, thereafter the tariff setting kicks in. It is relatively easy for setting tariff for generator and transmission because they don't have a consumer mix. They just have a person who is procuring tariff from them. But when it comes to tariff setting for distribution company, various factors, including cross subsidies, the average billing rate versus the average cost of supply, that ratio, we have to take care of tariff shocks are not given to a particular category of consumers. We also need to see that the person who is paying a cross subsidy is not paying more and more and more. That is, an increasing cross subsidy regime is not there. It has to be a reducing cross subsidy regime because it is a mandate of Government of India, and the Commission has also embarked on its own that the cross subsidies have to reduce. Then there is a clear mandate that we cannot regulatory asset, simply specifying that we should not push the reflective cost to future years because nothing comes free. We have to pay a heavy carrying cost to the utilities in case regulatory assets are created, and definitely the Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, the regulator is not supporting regulatory asset dispensation at all. And only if it is absolutely necessary, absolutely must, then probably Commission may be required to think of that. But as of now, fortunately in Maharashtra, the Commission is very clear that no regulatory assets are required to be created, and all the costs have to be cost reflective. The Commission really is required to strive very hard for maintaining the cost reflective tariff to the consumers. For tariff for tariff certainty, Maharashtra is probably the only state which gives upfront a tariff for the 5 years for each category for every year. Of course, there are deviations in that tariff beyond FAC also, and that is why the regulations has stipulated MTR. That is, after 3 years, at the end of 3 years, the tariffs are reset and then the balance 2 years are taken care. Now, this particular year was very, very crucial because in the first 3 years, the COVID pandemic hit India and the world, of course. But fortunately, because of a new avenue that was started by the Commission, that is called as FAC Stabilization Fund, the tariff shock was brought into control to that extent because the utilities had a positive fund in their FAC Stabilization Fund, and the utilities had to pay the cost for having that extra funds. So to that extent, that particular impact of tariff increase was reduced. Then, of course, Commission has started certain different things called as technical minimum. So in short, we are trying to operate the merit order dispatch in a manner where the cheapest power gets dispatched first, thereby benefiting the consumers. And of course, the individual ARR of the licensee is met by balancing the tariffs of all the consumer categories. To the extent possible, the cross subsidy surcharge or the cross subsidy that is paid by subsidized consumers is kept within plus minus 20% limit to the extent possible. And the next part, of course, is everybody expects that every consumer expects that the tariff should be reduced, the tariff should be low, especially when we are getting so much of solar, when we are developing the technologies. Of course, IESA and CES are experts in upcoming technologies, but then we also need to understand that it is an upcoming technology that is coming up, though the costs are reducing, solar cost is reducing, and definitely it is impacting the power purchase cost, which is the 70 to 75% basket of the ARR. But then it will gradually, it will have its impact. And of course, it will get balanced, and probably in near future, when the storage system becomes really a cheap option, that point of time, we can expect the tariffs to stabilize a little, if not reduce, and give a more certainty to all the consumers, especially the commercial and industrial consumers, which are at present paying the subsidy to other consumers. So that is what it is, and future outlook is very positive. Solar energy hybrid is there, developing technologies with storage system, pump storage, as well as battery storage. If the costs are rationalized, if the costs keep on reducing the way it has reduced for solar generation, possibly we can see better days ahead. Then, of course, smart meters are around the corner. The numbers are frightening. The number of smart meters which we require today is huge. We don't have enough manufacturers. We don't have enough numbers supplying smart meters, but that is a reality that is likely to happen in near future. And definitely when that happens, coupled with solar energy, the time of the day tariff will be kicked in for more and more number of consumers. And now the present tariff structure probably would be reversed, where the day tariff would be cheaper and night tariff, when we have to run the conventional generators, will be costlier in case the storage systems are not able to take care of the increasing trends. But definitely with the quantity that is expected, the solar systems and the storage systems are going to complement, and we can see a better future along with the smart meter installation that is in progress. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for a patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deshpande, for very elaborative description about how exactly the tariff is being set. So many factors come into the consideration while Regulatory Commission announces the tariff or approves the tariff. And you did mention about the flexibility that has been still there with the considering the ground realities. And you also mentioned that the attempt from the regulatory commission is favoring to large extent consumers. So every consumer has to understand that the regulatory commission's intent is to more on favoring the consumers and to some extent licensees. And you did touched upon the point of cross subsidy. And very good point that you mentioned that FAC stabilization fund that is in place in Maharashtra. Well, that is why we are avoiding the shocks to the consumer and managing the overall cost. I also appreciate you mentioning the advanced technologies and role of energy storage along with the renewables who will be coming on the grid, who are getting cheaper and cheaper. But as you rightly said, nothing comes free. So when we say that 2 rupees per unit solar energy, there is a cost for dispatching that energy and balancing the grid. So if discoms look at the levelized cost of the renewable plus storage, that would definitely make sense in coming time. But that topic at some other point for discussion. So moving onward, let's invite Amey. For your perspective as a data centers are in fact power guzzlers, and they are going to be the largest power consumers in India in coming time. So how do you see this tariff regime as a data center consumer?
Hey, thank you, Netra, and hello to the attendees and the co-panelists. Thank you, CES and IESA Academy for giving this opportunity. As you rightly said, Netra, power is one of the key inputs for us, and we consume a lot of power in a given area. So we track power closely, and it is one of the major inputs in the data center services. So before I start with the points, congratulations to MERC and MSEDCL. The entire process, I understand, is more than 6 months, right from preparation of the MTR filings and thousands of pages of documents. Also, MERC has to balance multiple stakeholders and their needs and demands. So congratulations to MERC and MSEDCL for that. Now coming to the points, again, thank you to MERC and MSEDCL for reducing the cross-subsidy for industrial category, in which basically data centers fit in, from 150 to 130%. However, in Asia per se, the data consumption is picking up, and there's a huge demand and growth opportunity for data centers. India has the opportunity to tap into this market and increase the data center capacity to almost fourfold in coming 5 to 6 years. So this also requires us to access to a optimal cost power, and would request MERC and MSEDCL to consider reducing the cost further for that, so that this market can be developed in India and we can cater to demand in various Asian countries of India. Cross subsidy for ST industrial for 115 to 130%. However, the thing is, in Asia, the data center demand and the demand for data consumption is growing up. India has the opportunity to cater to this demand not only within the country but also in other Asian countries by setting up data centers in India. We expect that the data center capacity in India would go up fourfold if we can cater to the demand for the neighboring countries, and including to the country like Singapore and the Southeast Asian countries. Probably one of the key inputs, the request to MERC and MSEDCL is to work towards. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe you to talk little slow. Few words are going.
Okay. So, request to MERC and MSEDCL is to work towards reducing cross subsidy for ST industrial customers, so that this key input can be used for basic power as a key input can be used for growing data center business in India per se. Next point is on the tariff and average billing rate. So really appreciate your efforts there, that the increase in tariff is 1% as compared to the previous year's tariff, which is including FAC. However, the concern for us as a consumer is there is a FAC component of up to 20% that may come up, which is obviously variable. And that itself leads to the ABR increasing by close to 15% if we consider 20% FAC. my third point was with respect to green tariff. Earlier, MSEDCL offered 66 paise per unit for a green tariff that was there. Now it is increased by 50 paise for obligated entities. The total is coming to 1 rupee 16 paise. However, other entities which are not obligated in my reading of the order can claim green tariff by paying 0.66 paise. But in this case, the renewable energy is considered for the RPO of the DISCOM. Now the submission here is that in case in many customers, right, there is an internal benchmark or internal efforts towards sustainability and voluntary targets that are taken. In case we pay, and this is one of the options to meet those targets. In case we pay 66 paise to the DISCOM, in that case, let the RPO not be taken by the DISCOM. And we will also not use it for the purpose of RPO, but for internal targets. But if at all the RPO is taken by the DISCOM and we also claim the credit when we publish a report to our customers and investors, then it becomes double accounting, which is morally not correct. So the submission is only that this may not be considered for RPO either for the DISCOM as well as for the consumer. And my other point was on the multiple source of supply. In the present petition, MSEDCL had filed for additional demand charges for entities seeking multiple source of supply. And I believe the number was 210 entities presently seek multiple sources of supply from MSEDCL. MERC wants to, basically want for detail and the computation which was not presented in the petition. MERC has rejected it with and granted liberty to MSEDCL to propose additional fixed charge. Now, in case of data centers, we are primarily connected to transmission level, and the cost of last mile connectivity from the nearest substation or a LELO is borne by the consumer. In such case, there is no additional power demand from the consumer as well. It basically gives us more reliable source of supply because if one fails, there is another one available. Now, in such cases wherein the last mile is also paid by the consumer, our submission is in case there's the proposal is put up to MERC for additional demand of fixed charge from the consumer because of additional source of supply, the same may not be considered. I think those are the points that I wish to present. Thank you, Netra. Over to you.
Thanks, Amey. So you touched upon this green tariff part, and a very important topic that whenever consumer is paying for the green tariff and DISCOM claiming the RPO for the same supply of green power, and that can be considered as a dual counting. So I think that is something needs to be addressed. Because as a corporate, you will not be willing to do the same. And then we have to work with the DISCOMs again that how exactly they are looking at it because they are charging the additional one in order to. So maybe Deshpande sir, we will come back to you at the later part of the discussion on this topic and for your views on that. The other point that you discussed is the investment done by the consumer at that getting that connectivity, that last mile connectivity with the 66 kV connection, and then having to pay something addition for multiple source of supply. I think that was the point, if I understand it correctly. So we have noted these points. Thanks for your observations and suggestions. And we will again come back in the discussion round about any additional things. So moving onward, Mr. Sant, you represent Siemens, who has been in India for over 100 years, and in fact contributing energy sector itself on our transmission, distribution, and so many things on the electricity sector. So over to you on your remarks on this topic.
Good. Hi. Thank you so much. So thanks for eminent panel and all the people who are joining from India and abroad. So I welcome each of you on this particular session. As you rightly said, Siemens is more than 100 years in India. There are few companies in the world who are surviving more than 150 years. So Siemens is the company now has recently completed its 175 years on the earth. So it's one of the oldest companies. And also, you rightly mentioned we are the company who is majoritarily into electrical products and which are very sensitive to the discussion which we are doing. thanks to Abhijeet, very good points which I was not at all aware, though I had some position in Siemens, whatever topics you briefed upon, that even I was not aware that 75% of the cost is coming from generation and transmission, and hardly 20-25 is coming from the other kind of cost. So thanks for that information. That really sets the expectation of the people, how the cost should be reduced, because majority of the work is to be done by somebody else and not only distribution people. So that really sets a good standard and really focus where we should be working upon on a bigger level. So thanks for that insight from your side. Also, thanks, Amey. You rightly said data center is the future and really will become a big power center wherein the consumption will be very high and will become a major guzzler in the shortest time. And India being, a very cheap country as far as basic infrastructure is concerned. So it's quite possible that data center will pick up very high level at that time. Energy sensitivity and its attention towards data center will call for a very big importance. So thanks for that insight also. So I'm just touched upon the important points which I noted out of our discussion. I would say Siemens is a very big company in India. We have almost 22 manufacturing setups in India, factory-wise. Though we are not energy sensitive, if you consider the definition of energy sensitivity, we are not the company who is energy sensitivity, a sensitive company like cement industry or steel industry. If you calculate the energy cost per piece, then we are not that high because our products are into a different sector. So though we are not energy sensitive company, we are one of the very high energy consuming companies in India, and that's why our focus on energy is globally attracted and globally focused. If you see and go through the Siemens policies and even few publications recently we have done by our global chairman, sustainability is the topic always on the table and the front runner in any of the policies and constitutions from Siemens Limited over last many years. And ESG is the big term which we used, wherein sustainability comes at its top. So it is not to reduce the energy cost as such, but the basic focus is reduce the CO2 emission. And with that, even with that focus, even sometimes we are ready to pay a little extra. As both of you said, the green tariff kind of thing. We are already ready to implement all the physical levers which we can implement, and above and all, if we want to make it 100% carbon neutral, then we are ready to pay that 60-68 paisa per unit, whatever the charges are there, and make it as a complete green power purchasing energy. So that kind of readiness also available on our table, and we are exploring all the physical levers. And the moment we exhaust all the physical levers, we are ready to pay that extra amount or deal in the open power, in the green power, or whatever sources available in the language of government, and make it ourselves as a green, not in the interest of profitability of the company, but in the interest of the society. And that is a bigger topic for all of us as a ESG focus. And I'm very proud to say that we are considering this at the highest level. As a constitution, if you see, Siemens has this energy tracking as a portfolio, sustainability as a portfolio, and globally we have one team, country level we have a team, and location level or a business level we have one team. So for central we have one team, and for operational also we have one team. So right from global to the local, it is a topic of focus and being reviewed, and it occurs as a part of our strategy everywhere when we make our own business plans. So it is a topic which is very sensitively taken over by the management as far as Siemens Limited in India and globally we considered. If you see by 2030, our internal target is to make the scope. If you see the case one study or scope one study, like our own consumption, we want to make it zero carbon neutral by 2030. That is our internal target. And scope 2 or case 2 and case 3, that is our logistics, our supply side, our vendor side. So that also ultimately that liability comes to us as a CO2 neutrality. And therein also we are putting a lot of efforts. We are exploring various ideas that this scope 2 and scope 3 also we make it neutral by 2050. So that is a long-term target, but these are the maximum time limits. It's not like that we pull on ourselves to that limit. We have to achieve these targets at the 50% of it time. If we get the right technology, right solutions, right partnership with the government, then we are ready to do it well before the time. And that's how globally we are looking in the greater interest and not only as a cost perspective. After I got this invitation, I did a little study about my own energy cost, and surprisingly, Mr. Abhijeet will be happy that I did not see a big alarm in energy cost because we are not very energy sensitive. But still, last 10 years, if I see, it's less than 4%. The price escalation which I could roughly calculate. And if I take my own initiatives like reduction in the fixed demand charges, which is also part of your billing, or billing charges, or some losses, in that case, it's hardly touching 2.5% last 10 years. And surprisingly, the pleasure shock in my calculations that as a Maharashtra state, we are in the basic prices for last 10 years in a very good shape. And for that, I would extend my compliments to the all government officers. And also, you mentioned one thing that Maharashtra is one of the states who is able to predict or estimate energy price for next 1 year. So that is also surprisingly a very good initiative that I should appreciate. Also, one comparison I did during this study that in Gujarat we have some big benefits coming in our factories. So as on today, the energy cost in Gujarat is little lesser than Maharashtra state, with very good initiatives and benefit transferred to the industries. But still, if I take 10 years average, initial cost of Gujarat was very high. So if you take the 10 years average as on date, we are matching with the Gujarat, unit prices, and that's also a pleasure information to share with you. But here onwards, the challenge will increase. That is my point, because Gujarat is giving the big benefits to the people. So maybe next year onwards, the delta will start increasing. So wherein we will have little expectations, and how to go ahead about it, that we can always discuss. And we are discussing with various institutions to the government through their invitation we got from government, from the principal secretary. We got an invitation to register our points. I think next meeting is scheduled with our CEO, Mr. Mathur, and the principal secretary of energy. So government is proactively coming forward. That's also a good news for us, that what are your problems, and the suggestions and the discussions. So overall, that is the energy cost scenario. We are doing our own initiatives in nutshell. I will tell you, because we have only a few minutes to go. Like solar is a very popular, big instrument wherein you can optimize on your cost as well as you optimize on your footprint. So we are using each and every inch of our premise rooftop to cover with the solar, and which are already completed 80 or 90% of our rooftops. In addition to that, we have formed a joint venture outside, wherein we can produce the solar energy. And in Solapur district, we have formed a joint venture with some company, wherein we get this open power solar also. But unfortunate thing which I want to mention here, and which is a very important point, which can be taken forward by all of you as a very senior leadership, and a organization and government representatives who can really help industries in this scenario, that whenever we are using joint venture outside for the solar production, and whenever we are using every inch of rooftop for solar production, in that case, the cost benefit and the CO2 benefit is only allowed to take only at one pocket. Means either I take the benefit of joint venture, or I take the benefit on the rooftop. So therein the compulsion is that this rooftop production I have to sell to the government at approximately the prefix price, which is 3 rupees as on today. And then the same units I have to buy at 9 or 10 rupees, whatever price is prevailing. So this is creating a big setback to my own sustainability targets. And Siemens being principally driven by the social targets and not by cost, but definitely cost income comes in picture, and the whole budget and the whole scenario which we are calculating to make carbon neutral is getting affected because of this particular rule. So Mr. Abhijeet can help us in this matter. Not Siemens. This is everywhere. I check with SKF, I check with Exide batteries, I check with Bosch. So this problem is being applicable to all these big national companies who are using solar as well as going for the joint venture. So this is the one point which is hot as on today, and the same we are going to discuss with CIA as well as Ministry of Energy in the next month. So that kind of setback is also there, but still we have taken a firm decision that let government think, let government correct, let government take the proper action. We continue with our own sustainability target irrespective of the cost. So that's the kind of thing to mention, which Siemens is also exploring a very high research, products which can be used in the transmission, which can be used in the distribution, which can be used in the households, everywhere in the industry. And indirectly, we are doing our business, but we are giving a carbon benefit to the society at the same cost. That is the big advantage. And Siemens is a very big player in the railways. Recently, Vande Bharat, metros, that the India is going ahead with the complete facelift of railway engineering, and that too Siemens has the big role about the electrical railway engines, where there is a big case study our CEO shared with me, that how much power we have saved in the railway engineering, and that's how Siemens is really playing a fantastic role on the national level, not only just on the cost benefit, but on the social impact on the country level and its operations as a overall. So that is my perspective and thought on this particular topic. So overall, in a nutshell, I would say that unit rate, etc., is not so alarming as on today. But from sustainability point of view, if government allows all these kind of benefits, make little liberal on their policies, then all the multinational companies really come forward in the interest of the society and really make a very nice kind of gesture going ahead. So with that note, I conclude my statements, and then eventually when we conclude the session, we can have question and answer. I can elaborate more on the topic. So thanks for giving the opportunity and sharing our thoughts. Yeah, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Sant. And I really appreciate your team taking time in looking at the trends over the last 10 years. And good to know that you found this good positive information that there has never been a shock in terms of unit electricity cost. And also appreciate you for mentioning the global to local focus on the ESG activities and doing these sustainability initiatives from the even the social perspective. And there comes again that next point where actually I would like to invite Anne, who has, so Prayas has recently published article on India's energy transition through its states, right? Where it is on a larger level as a India 2070 net zero goal and the 500 gigawatt of renewables by 2030, wherein states are going to add lot of renewables. And as Mr. Deshpande said, as we are going to add lot of solar during daytime, the TOD slot that may change, right? So right now, when you are getting the incentives at night time, DISCOM may start giving incentive during the daytime. Even the TOD time slots may change accordingly. And in that case, Mr. Deshpande touched upon the point of cross subsidy as well. When lot of such corporates are going with the captive status or captive open access projects, where they do not have to pay the cross subsidy. Now, that will again change the equation. So, Anne, you must have done a very good analysis on that, how exactly all this transition is going to change, how it is going to affect. So, over to you, Anne. Yeah, looking forward to your comments.
Thank you, Netra, and thank you so much for inviting Prayas for this event. We are a Pune-based organization with over 30 years of experience looking at policy and regulatory engagements in the power sector, specifically in Maharashtra. And I will just focus a little bit on Maharashtra itself. And I think it's a very exciting time to be in the sector looking at electricity, because there are so many changes technologically that we have to adopt to, so many changes in the market structure. So just taking a look back, and this is supporting what the three other esteemed panelists also have been saying, that since the first regulatory commission's order in Maharashtra in 2001, the overall tariffs have been increasing at an average rate of 5% per annum, right? And this is more or less keeping with inflation. Industrial tariffs have actually been increasing at only 4% per annum. And this is what Mr. Sant was also talking about with his own bills. So I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. The other part about cross subsidy, I think it's very interesting to note that, Mr. Naik also alluded to this, that, cross subsidy for industry is more or less, less than 20% or at 20% of the cost of supply. So that clearly means that this is within the limits of the national tariff policy. But we also know that the MSEDCL is having financial challenges. The costs are increasing. So what is the balancing act that's really being done is very important to sort of understand. So one clear thing which also is emerging out of is that cross subsidies contribution to meeting the revenue requirement of the utility is slowly coming down, and it's actually government subsidies which are playing a much larger role in terms of supporting the revenue requirement of the utility. And that is something that we need to keep in mind while looking at the transition and also the role of distribution companies going forward. And there the focus, I think, when we really talk about tariffs, should also be on costs. And this is what Deshpande also was talking about. And there, the regulator also has done very interesting things. I mean, Maharashtra is one state which has consistently been looking at agricultural consumption, which is also a category which receives significant amount of subsidy and cross subsidy, and has been disallowing agricultural consumption based on feeder meter input data consistently since 2014-15. Which, over the years has resulted in, about 67,000 MUs of disallowance and has saved consumers about 20,000 crores. So the role of the regulator in really looking at efficiencies of the utility is quite significant. The role of the government, also in terms of balancing some of these things, in terms of reducing cost of supply. I mean, the government of Maharashtra has recently launched Mission 2025, so as to provide 7 gigawatts of power to farmers for daytime supply. But what that also does is reduce the cost of supply for agricultural consumers, which in fact benefits all consumers of MSEDCL. So these kind of innovative measures in order to reduce cost of supply is important, and it should be across the value chain. So not just looking at innovations within the distribution segment, but also looking at contracting, looking at efficiency of coal. A lot of the cost pass through is actually because of increased coal imports, the change in law dispensations that happened earlier. So we really need to think about all these aspects as well. And going forward, because of the financial challenges of the utility and this increase in cost, I think the focus should also shift towards increasing efficacy of what is a capital expenditure. How do we really think about budgeting for O&M expenses? Because quality of supply and service, reliability services will attain paramount importance, especially for industrial consumers who have options to get power from other competitive supply options such as captive or open access. The role of the distribution company would be to provide that reliability service, that provider of last resort. And there it's very, very important to focus on those aspects, to unbundle the tariffs which exist for the utility today, and look at ways in which some of these critical services that are being provided by the utility can be compensated at cost. Because right now, I think there is some amount of socializing of that cost, or also whether those costs are being provided at concessional rates because of the which is implicit in the bundling of the tariffs that is happening today. So if you think about a little bit of the future direction that is there, I think on energy terms, we all know that CNI consumers save significantly if they go for open access and much more if they go for captive. But that is on the foundation of many of the services that are being provided by the utility. And really what is important is to have an environment which facilitates that kind of choice, consumer choice, the freedom to choose a supplier to achieve cost optimality for many of these consumers, but at the same time also to compensate the distribution companies adequately for the services being provided. I think that balance is something that we need to move forward towards. And I think Maharashtra in that sense is a front runner on this in many, many aspects. With respect to, providing clarity in many of the processes, right? I think having that period of non-applicability for, grid support charges till rooftop reaches 2 gigawatts, or, giving a significant amount of period for implementation for KVH billing, so that many of the implementation challenges can be addressed for industries. Certainty in charges is something that can again be thought of. I mean, we are talking about CSS, AS wheeling almost coming to about 3.72 rupees per unit. For many of the industrial consumers, if that is fixed for, let's say, a 5 to 7 year period at 3.5 rupees per unit, on nominal terms, that amount is definitely, in real terms, that's going to definitely reduce over time. And therefore, that certainty is also there in terms of making investments and moving more towards long-term solutions rather than short-term solutions for utilities. And also in terms of clarity with the green open access rules, how do we really reconcile, what the rules are saying with what the regulations are saying, and what is the framework and that certainty in framework by which investments can be made? I think that kind of clarity should definitely emerge in the coming years. And I think the point that I want to focus on is that the role of the distribution company is really changing. It will be more as a supplier to small consumers, entity which maintains many of the wires networks, is responsible for the wires networks, and also is a reliability service provider to larger consumers who go for alternate supply options. And in that context, whatever framework we think about, which the state governments, consumers, regulators have to collectively evolve, it should ensure that the consumers who are going for alternate supply options, they reap the benefit of competitive choice, but they also bear the risk of market procurement. That cost should not be socialized. That cost should not be, cross-subsidized by other consumers who are depending on the utility. And the regulator should definitely provide those frameworks, those forward-looking frameworks with clarity, for certainty, and for cost compensation in a proactive manner. So that we can learn early on, because in the next 5 years, this is going to play out in a very, very large scale. If we're thinking about demand aggregation, virtual net metering, and many of these provisions going forward, peer-to-peer transactions are also being talked about for rooftop. These are going to play out in a very, very large scale, very fast. So I think having proactive regulatory frameworks is very, very important. And I think Maharashtra is anyway a front runner in that, especially for cost compensation frameworks on many fronts. And I think state governments also need to think about how do we really accelerate new technologies coming into the market? How do we really use them to reduce costs of supply itself? How can we encourage a long-term market development within the state rather than short-term opportunistic switching, which makes reliability provision and procurement for the distribution company even more challenging. So I think some kind of a compact, some kind of discussion where we really think about tariff design going forward. Okay, for the next 5 to 7 to 10 years, what is the general direction and tariff philosophy we really need to evolve given the changing role of the distribution company? If all of these changes are inevitable because of the changing economics in the sector, how do we really think about these issues? What are the challenges that can be addressed? How do we really innovate around time of day tariff design? How do we really ensure that there is consumers are encouraged to consume during higher RE availability? How do we really incorporate storage into many of these conversations? I think that kind of conversation should happen before the MYT regulations are finalized for the next control period. And I think that will really set the principle and provide clarity to a lot of consumers. So I'll stop with that.
Thanks, Anne. You touched upon so many critical and important points and really completed kind of a 360-degree view for this discussion. So some points we would like to again go back to Mr. Deshpande for his remarks after listening to additional 4 panelists. And some points I would definitely request you to touch upon is this green tariff, where consumers are ready to pay the higher tariff, and the expectation is to get the right of claiming those that green energy without giving that RPO, without allowing RPO claim by the DISCOM. And other point is socializing the cost of supply. So cross subsidy is something which is there in Maharashtra, which is cross subsidizing the agriculture consumption. But when the most of these large consumers going ahead with the open access captive setups, and then that cross subsidy will not be, they are not liable to pay that cross subsidy, then how that equation is going to be complete and different. And the third point is how the industry and the stakeholders can really help regulator and DISCOM in taking those right steps for the next tariff setting. So what do you expect from us as a ecosystem to support on this exercise?
Yeah. Thanks, Netra. Basically, green tariff versus green open access. Green open access is round the corner. It is unstoppable. From 1 megawatt limit, we are now, there are rules that have said that we have to come down to 100 kVA. So definitely that will be a game changer. More and more people will go in for green open access, because 100 kVA is not a very big load at all. So basically commercial and industrial consumers, very soon they will have this particular option, since the rules are already notified by Government of India. Now the ERCs have to take a stock of all that situation within each state and come out with a plan. Then one thing is very, very clear, that as you have rightly said, nothing is free. For example, we are saying that solar is at 3 rupees a unit. Is it really at 3 rupees a unit? When all the transmission charges for all the projects that are coming till June 2025 do not have to pay the transmission charges, and hence it is at 3 rupees a unit. But actually somebody else is paying those transmission charges. PGCIL is investing in that corridor, and they are incurring cost, and that is reflected in POC charges. So nothing is free. So when you factor in all these things and then you compare the price, that will be a real picture, rather than just trying to say that solar is very cheap. Yes, it is definitely cheaper than conventional power as it stands today. But is it really at 3 rupees, or it is 3 plus something delta, double delta, triple delta, whatever the case may be? So somebody will have to pay for all the costs, and it cannot be socialized, I think. And also touch base this particular issue, that these costs cannot be socialized on people, because there are people who cannot afford a rooftop. There are people who do not want to go in for open access. They cannot go in for open access because their loads are smaller. So obviously they cannot be expected to pay for open access consumers, because they are not wanting to pay for the infrastructure cost. So the crux will be who pays for the infrastructure cost. And the solution is also very simple. Whoever uses that infrastructure pays for that infrastructure. It has to be as simple as a toll tax on a road. You use a particular patch of road, you pay that much amount and just go away. If you're a truck with 8 axles, then you pay a higher cost. If you're a car, you pay a lower cost. If you're a two-wheeler, you go there free of charge. So this has to be incorporated now sooner or later, and it will be done very soon by the regulators, because when it comes to 100 kVA, that has to be factored in while calculating the real cost of solar energy. Then coming to the point which Mr. Sant raised, and that point is also very important about adjustment of units. Yes, in open access, the units are adjusted against their own RPO. But when it comes to green tariff, that provision is not there. There was a request during this MTR period also, but probably the commission thought that since it's a midterm review, a holistic study needs to be carried out first, and then that probably would be taken up during the MYT, the next MYT, which is around the corner, which is about 2 years from now. So that point is valid and it does have merit, but then that point also cannot be seen in isolation, because when the procurement is from by MSEDCL, it will have to be cost reflective, and if they're paying more than what is being sought from by the utility from the consumers. So for example, suppose waste to energy is a mandate. Now waste to energy is at say 7 rupees, and solar is at 3 rupees. Now, waste to energy, the government of India says that nothing doing, you have to buy whatever comes your way. The utilities are buying. Now, all these factors, the cost of power procurement needs to be studied in totality rather than cherry picking things. Cherry picking is the worst way of working out any solution. So yes, Mr. Sant has a point, and that will be looked into by the commission when the MYT regulations are made in next one and a half year time. So is there anything, Netra, which I have missed out or trying to duck the question?
Yeah, just one point. Now, most of the consumers in Maharashtra are going with the captive setup of renewable energy. And the one reason for that is the cross subsidy surcharge, right? The cross subsidy surcharge makes the landed cost of energy really expensive. And just to save that cross subsidy surcharge, so earlier, even in other states, people do have preference for third party, but because of certain structure, the people are going for captive setup where they have to put that equity investment. Now, this cross subsidy is actually subsidizing certain set of consumers in Maharashtra. So my colleague, Mr. Chandrasekhar, has one very innovative point to share. So Mr. Chandrasekhar, are you there? So this is a socializing. So can it be a part of ESG? So as Mr. Sant said that the actually renewable or sustainability initiatives, it's not just for the saving the cost, and the corporates are willing to pay some additional in order to achieve their targets and have the additional solar. So yes, Chandrasekhar sir, over to you. I think he has really innovative idea.
Yeah, can you listen to me? Can you listen to me clearly?
Yes, yes.
So the idea is, cross subsidy is being paid by, CNI and third-party open access consumers. So it is important that, despite the fact that this is allowed as an expenditure in the books of the accounts, and assuming that average 30% is the corporate tax rate, but the excess 70% which is being paid by these consumers needs to be really adjusted somewhere. So is there a possibility that this amount can be given as a credit to, CNI consumers and open access consumers as a social credit under ESG guidelines? Today in India, there are 1,000+ companies who are supposed to report under ESG guidelines. And, as Mr. Sun said, that they are facing problems in terms of sustainability guidelines to be met, and they are trying to adjust, their expenditure to the extent possible to ensure that they really adjust to the sustainability guidelines and goals and achieve those goals at the earliest. So my question to the panel is that can this excess credit or excess expenditure should be allowed as a social credit under the ESG guidelines? So that's where I want to put my thought across, and I would request the panel to really address this particular issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar. See, the point is, this Electricity Act is a very, very new act. It is just 20 years old in that sense. And you must have seen lot of changes, major changes happening in these 20 years. Now, whatever you have said is presently not a part of a regulation. None of the states have incorporated that. But definitely that idea is open, and it can be taken up while formulating the regulations. There would be some changes, there will be some suggestion, comments, and then the commission will take a view on that particular thing. But nothing, as long as electricity sector is concerned, the regulation making is a continuous and an open-ended process. So any ideas can be incorporated subject to the checks and balances, but they have to be first put in the regulation, and only thereafter it can be implemented in the tariff dispensation.
Mayor, do you have any comments on this this way of looking at the cross subsidy?
Nothing specific comment there. Sorry, there's some disturbance, but no specific comment on this side. It's an innovative suggestion. Let's see how it fits into the framework. Plus, when we do actually ESG, the ultimate benefit has to be looked at, right? So it becomes slightly blur when it goes into the system without knowing who is actually getting that benefit.
Right. So, and your comments, because when the cross subsidy surcharge is there in the ARR calculation, right? Cross subsidy, or which is subsidizing certain set of consumers in Maharashtra. So, does it make sense to take this as a suggestion and take it forward?
Intent of cross subsidy was basically to cause the compensate the distribution company for the cost of supply, the revenue attrition that is happening because of sales migration, right? So, you hear me?
Your voice is very low right now for me.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes.
So I think the intent was basically to compensate the distribution company for some of the revenue attrition and for the costs incurred by the distribution company. And I agree. I think the ESG framework is also evolving in India. I think we also need to see what kind of guidelines are being looked at. I think SEBI, RBI are also in talks in terms of looking at what really would qualify as ESG. And in my opinion, I think cross subsidy is given with the intent of compensating the distribution company so it can supply power. How do we really attribute that to anything to do with environmental and social directly is not very clear. So I think this has to evolve. I think we should keep this conversation alive, but it really needs to be seen in the context of not just the electricity sector framework and the intention, but also how the ESG framework, which is also quite nascent in India, is evolving. So I think it's a mix of both.
Sure. Mr. Sant, any closing remarks from your side?
And nothing very special, but very interesting discussion, and acknowledging all the suggestions. I think all of us as a best Indian citizens and the best professionals in the energy sector, our aim is to reduce the cost is definitely a first task, which we got too much of overview from all of us, and it has to be always clubbed with the social attitude also. So both put together, we can really make efforts in the interest of society as well as the interest of the organizational benefit. So put together, I think it's a overall it's a very good discussion. And we two interesting projects we are just doing. One is in the sector of geothermal, which is a very good technological solution, which is very effective in Europe because of geological conditions. But other way we can also try these kind of technologies in India, at least wherever geographically it is very, very advantageous. Then we are also researching the thermal storage kind of solutions, which are also very suitable depending upon the industry requirements, their positioning and the product and processes. So these kind of out of the box technologies we should be able to really research, which can give a big benefit, because energy saving is also very important along with cost reduction at source, as Mr. Abhijeet said, into the generation topic. And one more important topic is distribution sector. We have to really strengthen technologically very strong area, because the transmission and distribution losses are so high in India, along with the energy theft, which cannot be discussed openly. But these are the energy leakages. So whatever we produce is not reaching to the end customer. It is getting lost somewhere, remains unused, and nobody is going to pay for that. So these kind of things, microgrids, then transmission losses reduction, then enhance the strengthening the whole distribution system. These are bigger level topics which really we can do as a technological advancement. And the losses we reduce, more we become the cost effective in the solutions which we are discussing. So thanks overall. It's a very strengthful, very helpful discussion in the interest of industries. Thank you.
Thanks. And that brings us to the end of this session. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining the session and very insightful discussion. We have tried to put this as a deliberation from our side on this important topic. And we will keep you updated. We will reach back to you for any guidance or anything that that is required. And I hope you will support us. And yeah, thank you very much. And thanks to all our audience. Yeah.